Good evening, everyone. Tony Campbell here from Project Control Simplified. I thought I'd do a video for you showing you some more behind the scenes stuff. Quite a lot of you commented that you liked what I showed you last time, where I took you through that initial estimate we produced for like £500,000 on that project, and how I'd leveraged Excel to make doing the estimate easier by using Excel like it's meant to be used, rather than just using it to create pictures. Anyway, that's not why I want to talk to you tonight. So I wanted to show you some more behind the scenes stuff that we do here at Project Control Simplified, specifically related to project managing investors' projects. So as well as offering training, support and help, advice, I also actually do project manage projects, especially for investors. So what I'm going to show you tonight is where you should start when you're doing that. You may have heard me talk about defining your project objective before and why that's so important. So I'm going to take you through an example of one that we did for an investor on a buy-to-let property, so you can see what one looks like, see how easy it is to fill out, and hopefully you see the benefit of why we do it. So as I've said before, you probably heard me say this, your project objective is what we'd say start with the end in mind. So figure out what the end point of your project looks like. And that's vital, because if you don't know where you're going, you don't know what the end point is and what the destination is, how can you possibly know how to get there? How can you plot a course to get there in the most efficient way? You can't. So it's vitally important that you define your project objective. That's where all projects start. Out in industry, we have exactly the same thing. It's just called something different. What we usually start with is what the user wants. So because they are kind of the client, you give them what they want and they define that for you. But we have to accept that we're dealing with property investors in what we do, especially if you're a deal packager, or if you invest in property for yourself. You can use this. You can use this yourself to define your project objective. Vitally important. So let's have a look at it. It's pretty simple. This video isn't going to take long. As you've heard me say before, there's 5 key questions you need to ask yourself to define your project objective. So I'll show you the one that we did for a buy-to-let project. So this is our standard template. You probably will see that we have standard templates for almost everything, and there's a reason for that. First of all, it saves you having to create a new template, so it makes you more efficient. That's vitally important, because you don't be spending hours creating a new one every time and not quite remembering what format you did the last one in, and they all look slightly different. This makes you so much more professional having templates already set out. So this is one of our standard templates, and you just fill it in. The other reason why we set our templates, apart from being efficient, is because everything in life is an improvement. So there's no such thing as perfection. You can never get there, because you can always improve. And what we do with our template is we create the best template we possibly can with all the information we have and the way we're delivering. But then over time, we'll gradually get better. It's just natural that you improve the more you do something. And then what you can do is what we call trial and improvement. So you trial something and then you improve it slightly based on what you've actually found in its application. That's fundamental to project management. Everything around project management is based on a system, and then that system's just gradually trialed and improved as things go on to make it better. And that's just what happens. So anyway, the 5 questions, you may have heard them before. If you haven't, it doesn't matter, because we're going to go through them now. So the first question you ask is, what's the plan for the project? And this might be similar to the plans that you have for yours. You buy in and you're going to refurbish and refinance a 2-bedroom terrace house as a buy-to-let. So you need to define that, because you're defining what you're doing and how you're going to get there. That's vitally important for the plan. So what you're doing is a buy-to-let, and how you're going to get it is by BRR in it. So that's the 2 things you want to do. If you're doing a HMO, you're going to be doing something similar. You're going to be refurbishing and converting a house into a HMO. So you just got to define it like that. And it's important to do that, as silly as it sounds, because you already know this, but write it down. The next thing you do is you exit. So this is important to define the timescale of your project. So you can see on this one, we're refinancing upon project completion. And that's important because refinancing on project completion is obviously going to be sooner than refinancing upon putting a tenant in the property. So you need to know that, because you want to know when you're realising your investment, and you also need to know your project costs are really going to go until the point where you realise your investment. Because say you were refinancing upon placing a tenant, and there was a period of time between your project completing and you getting a tenant in place. Ideally, you want to minimise that. But let's say it was a month, just for ease. You're then going to have to build in the costs of the utility bills, the council tax, and potentially your finance arrangement, whether it's a mortgage or bridge, for an extra month, because you're not going to be able to repay them until you refinance. So knowing that is vital. Nick James. Knowing that is vital to being able to understand your total project costs. So that's why we define the exit. The next one's your target market. So we're looking at a single child family. This property is directly opposite a school, and it's only 2 bedrooms, as you can see from the top. So you're not really going to be getting a family with lots of children, because they're obviously not going to fit in. You may potentially have a secondary target market, which is a single parent family, or a couple potentially looking to live there with 2 bedrooms. So you've got to bear this in mind, and you can put multiple answers to this. You just need to make sure that you number them. So your number 1 plan is whatever it is. Your number 1 exit aligns to number 1 plan. Your number 1 target market aligns to your exit and plan above. Do you see what I'm saying? So you can then put a second one in, but just make sure you put a second one in for everything, and it's applicable. Then the last one, sorry, not the last one, the next one is the target demographic. So based on the area, you're going to be probably getting a working class tenant, and they're going to be blue collar. So they're going to be paid, a modest salary, and they're going to be working. We're not targeting housing benefit. We're not targeting professionals. You just got to define that, because this is going to start to define what you put in the property. You're not going to be spending loads putting a kitchen in. You're not going to be spending loads putting a bathroom in, if you're only going to be getting $550 a month in rent, because it's just not going to be worth it as an investment. It's not, because those people don't deserve it. So then the last thing is the key constraint, and this is from the project management triangle. You've got 4 options here: cost, time, quality, or scope. One of those things is going to be the key constraint, so the thing that can't be compromised. And it's funny, really, because I had an initial conversation with this investor, and based on what they told me, I thought the key constraint was cost. So I put cost in there because the budget but had a constraint on it, so I was led to believe. And then when I replayed this to them and ran them through the sheet, they actually told me they could flex on the budget a little bit, but the key was they want to meet a certain done-up value to be able to realise the investment properly. Realise the investment properly. So therefore, quality becomes the key, because you want a quality look. So when the valuer comes around, you're potentially going to maximise the amount the property is valued at. Obviously, if the comparables were like 60k, it's unrealistic to say 110. But what this investor's looking for is, a high level for this area. So you might be at a new market high, or potentially around other market highs at that revaluation. So understanding your constraint is key. And that's important, because if I'd have just put cost here and not played this back to the investor, I would then be making project decisions based on the cost, on the budget, and I'd be trying to reduce the costs to match the initial budget, or the initial estimate that was set by the investor, and that would have been wrong. So it's always important, as you might have heard me say before, one of the number one things that a project manager has to do is manage everybody's expectations, and that's everyone on the project. So all of your key stakeholders, that's all your workers, your clients, everybody, all your contractors, building control, planning, if you're engaging them, they're all project stakeholders. So you have to manage them all, and that's why I want to highlight this, because if I hadn't have played this back to the investor, I could potentially be proceeding with an error in the objective. And understanding your objective, as I said, is fundamental to successful project delivery. So if I hadn't done that, I potentially could have caused an unsuccessful project. But the key message here is that you just actually need to define these things in your project. And I'm sure you can see just by looking at this, these are 5 simple questions that it takes 10 minutes to answer. Because I'm saying 10, it actually takes a minute to type it in, but you need to consider it based on the information you've got and talk to the person who you're doing your project for to understand what these key things actually are. So we can combine this now into a statement for the project, and we can then move forward and start breaking down the scope of work and defining a specification for the property. And that's something I am going to show you. I'm going to do a separate video, which I'll publish probably sometime next week, which shows you how we do a specification. And I'll use this property so you can see the thread of this property. I'll show you the specification we put together and how you can then use that in yours, and show you how it aligns with what we've wrote down in the objective. So guys, I hope you found that really useful. This is the first thing you should do on any project, and especially if you are a deal packager or you're delivering projects for investors in some way, shape or form. I'd advise you to start doing things like this on your project, because this is real project management. If I see a lot of people talking about project management, just walking out on site and making sure everybody's doing what they're doing. And the reality is that's not project management. It may be project management in their eyes because that's their limited view of project management. But I'm telling you, it's not. This is what real projects do out in the real wide world of project delivery. And I'm taking these lessons and techniques, simplifying them a bit for you, so that we can implement them on our property projects. So by implementing this, you are going to become you're going to elevate yourself above other people offering project management services, which is good for you. But the reality is, I don't care about that. What I care about is successful project delivery. I want to help you deliver projects successfully. So that's the reason why I'm showing you this, because this is key to successful project delivery. As I said, this is defining the end point, and now you're going to be able to plot your course to get there. Cheers guys, see you on the next video.